of Sand by Geetanjali Shree. Translated by Daisy Rockwell. Part 2. Sunlight. Chapter 59. They all stood around, an unmatching set. Bade, Bahu, Beti, KK, some other people, friends, and such of one or the other. Everyone avoiding eye contact, but deeply immersed in intimate worry, related to the intimate body part of an intimate human, Ma's vagina, or penis. Enter Rosie Bua, panting like a horse. What, Baji? What, baby? Why didn't you tell me? Don't make this a habit, Baji. Old age plays games. Ma was pleased the moment she saw her. This was nothing to do with old age. Even little girls get cysts, boils, pimples. This is your youthful old age. Everyone averted their eyes, darting about. It's nothing, just an infection, said Ma proudly. Where were you? Off on your bossing rounds? She scolded. Practicing my art, Baji. I practice reciting 34 poems every day, 17 facing in one direction, 17 in the other. And what is this you are wearing here right in the middle of a crowd? Rosie pointed at the bangles on Ma's wrist. Ma looked at her with surprise. Only 2, said Ma. Baji, this is India, where people steal the chained tin cups from railway toilets while they are taking a shit. And here we are at a hospital, where they strip everyone naked. Eyes again darted about. It's not like I have come here to stay. Ma closed her eyes. When she opened them, she took off her bangles and lifted Beti's hand. You wear them. There are 4 people you must steer clear of, said Rosie, revealing the perspiration in her armpits as she raised her arms to unfasten her bun, twist her hair back up and repin it. The lawyer, the policeman, the doctor, and the butcher. Those 4 are always busy sticking people, either with cases or with knives. It's just going to be an ordinary little puncture, not some kind of knifing. I know everything, Rosie Bua snapped back. I have just come from speaking with the head nurse. I'm here now, she said, leaning over Ma, waggling her finger. This is where they make the sick sicker, she said menacingly. So you'll keep coming back for more. They just make sure not to kill you because then you won't come back. Operate indeed. Why operate? To poke? Prick? These doctors do love a good poke around. Prick the boil. She flushed with anger, then laughed, especially the men. From then on, Ma dubbed her new growth the boil, which had grown within her and popped out at every twist or shake. A cheery phallus, whose eruption date the doctors had designated for the coming week. Until then, it would periodically emerge in secret, peep out at the world, then return to sleep in its cave. Or was it Shiva's throbbing lingam that Parvati had pulled within to dip in her cool waters and extinguish its burning? Shh! Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. The yoni poured soothing water over the boiling desires so they might be stilled. Nirvana, meditation, samadhi, just as you see in every Shiva temple. The yoni and the yogi. Chapter 60. The growing smaller woman was mesmerized. She had gathered every scar, freckle, movement, moan from the earth of her body and replanted it in the clay earth, as though she were removing all the forgotten stones, twigs, and thorns from the earth to make it smooth and fertile again, so a new crop could grow. And a phallus had grown. Perhaps Ma was fearful. It can be intoxicating to recognize and remap the body, but if others interfere like doctors, it's no fun. My earth is my own. Shoot, leaf, stalk, cluster, or this most auspicious lingam, or even if it's merely a lowly cyst which must be removed, then so be it. But it's for me to do so. The moment the word operation springs into the air, the conversation reaches its apogee. Some are stunned, some despair, some are enraged, some return to faith, some are carefree, some are end of story. Some feel the need to lecture. Array, even an injection is an operation. Do not fear. Some hold forth with their knowledge. Not even a needle. They don't actually use a needle. They remove the pus from the cyst with a syringe and then it dries up on its own and falls off. Others remind that when you clean, you just scrub the uncrusted dirt off, don't you? It's really just exactly the same as that. No worries. Stop fretting. Don't stop the operation. And Bahu declared that overseas son had reported on the phone that this digging, cutting, twisting is quite a minor procedure. And after that, you will learn whether the thing is benign or malignant. Perhaps Ma felt angry. Once Rosie was by her side, she became more powerful. It could be that the two of them had sat down face to face and cursed all cysts and cyst poppers so vehemently that exactly 2 days before the surgery, something bizarre occurred. A stream of blood trickled down Ma's thigh, like a young girl's first period. What's this? Betty was alarmed, and wrapped cloth around cotton to make a pad, called KK, and told Bahu, who swirled in like a dust storm with Bade. Bade was the most silent and most worried. On the other hand, he felt they should get Amma fixed up as soon as possible and take her away. And on the other, he worried that before she went into the operation theatre, they should have her sign some checks and share papers, some for the land outside of the city as well. The final installment still needed to be paid on that. Amma would also want this. If the house were finished, the one with a lawn and sunlight, then Amma would be happier. His wife didn't want to leave the heart of the city. If she had her way, they would sell the new house and let their sons invest the money themselves. But let's sign, so there is no danger of late fees or cause for worry. And just in case, 1 or 2 signatures on blank paper too. But when was the right moment to push the papers forward, and how many? Bade stood by looking utterly defeated, which is, after all, the fate of all eldest sons. So Ma was taken for the third time from Betty's home in a blue gown and a wheelchair for Tess, and the entire worried throng wove about here and there, separate, near and dear, and seeing the doctor arrive, they amassed asking, what happened? Congrats, the lady doctor said. No, she did not say it's a boy or it's a girl or it's a bicycle. She said the cyst had burst all on its own, as sometimes happens, and all they had to do heal the wound was administer 1 course of antibiotics, and everything will be hunky-dory, said Rosie. And now, with everyone's approval, Ma returned to Betty's home. It was a lady problem like menstruation. Who better to handle it than a daughter? For the next few days, the thick, oozy flow continued. Betty purchased sanitary towels, feeling as though she were buying them for her daughter, and paper envelopes and old newspaper were placed in Amma's bathroom, and she was told to wrap them up and throw them away, just as Ma had once taught her to do. Once again, Betty wondered if it wouldn't have been better if she had married. That is, if she had, and the marriage hadn't ended, she would have heaps of children, people of every age coming and going through her home, and there would be her own siblings, and his siblings, and uncles and aunties, and their gabloos and babloos, and mother-in-law and father-in-law, and helpers and workers and authorities would all be there, and perhaps there would be a 2-story house and a room on the roof which she would have turned into her study. where sometimes she would nip in and someone or the other would be with Ma so that she could sit worry-free with no fear of sudden events. Amma, what's that ooze that stinks so? What is it? She asked, bending over the wastebasket outside the door to throw away the paper packet. My infection, said Amma proudly, which we killed. God, please end these strange days. Where did they come from? These awful, horrible days. Chapter 61. One should not say that, nor think it, because time is the great one-upsman. Whatever you say, time insists on one-upping you. You could say, "Oh, what a horrible time this is," and then it will go ahead and make things even more horrible, and no one will ever say, "But these are good days." Achhe din, except for the government, that is. Anyway, since Beatty had said these were strange times, you know it won't be long before they turn much stranger. First there was Rosie, whom she couldn't find, but found Raza instead. This had made Beatty anxious, and now he who had never appeared until that day began to appear with regularity. He appeared at the pawn shop, and the same thing happened, where he turned and didn't recognize Beatty, his face frozen, ice in his eyes. Then she saw him smoking a cigarette and sipping tea with the truck drivers at the dhaba on the main road. One time she was buying sago, and she turned to see him right next to her buying a packet of cornflakes. Her head tilted in hello, but his did not. The gaze that pierced right through her said, "You're smiling at a strange man. What's this?" Furthermore, she found him standing outside the lift at the newspaper office. The two of them entered together, and the lift ascended silently, and they both got out on the same floor. He politely held the door open button so that she could get off. And then he got off. He nodded slightly at her thanks, but all of it in a one stranger to another sort of way. She was already used to Rosie, the way she would come home from somewhere and find her in her house, and she would bathe in the morning and come out, and Rosie would be sitting in the hall. So it was not her voice but Amma's that stunned her. Not the voice, but the conversation topic. She heard, "No less than 2 inches." Goodness, Betty flashed hot with a mixture of shame, anger, humiliation. How could Amma say such things to Rosie? And now the two of them are chuckling over Amma's 2-inch lingam. Betty came out, as she had to face the music. And then the displeasure in her heart was replaced by a wave of distrust. Before her was Raza Taylor Master, not Rosie. In her home, with Amma, gabbing about 2 inches? She saw that here was the measuring tape, pencil glasses, and Amma was being measured for a robe. 2 inches less will be too much, Ammaji. No, no, Ma insisted. You don't know how quickly it gets too long, and I trip. I'm shrinking. How can that be, Ammaji? Master smiled politely. Well then, the cloth must be growing on me. Thank you, thank the Lord. They were talking about something else. Betty's anxiety rose and dissipated. But the horror subsided only to rise again, not a wave, but a snake regarding her hood upraised. My daughter, Ma introduced her. Tailor Master, Amma told Betty. The snake nodded his head. May you live long, baby, he hissed. Should I be afraid? In my own home? Betty didn't reply, only continued to watch quietly, tall and hearty. No, perhaps Rosie didn't look such a pahalwan. But was it her? How can one body take two forms? Or perhaps we are all alike. We just look different, depending on our clothing, gait, manners, our standing straight or slouching, limping or strutting. One gesticulates like a dancer, the other is pillar tall, and that makes them look different. Betty brought 2 more cups of tea with her own and set them out. Rosie, Sorry, Raza, said Bibi. What was the need? He smiled. His mouth opened, his teeth were showing. Those same front teeth, ordinary, the front two a little crowded, one on top of the other, so that when the light fell on them there was an uneven flicker of light and shadow. When Rosie comes, I'll look more closely. Beatty moved away. Is this Rosie, or does he just look like Rosie? They look alike and then they don't. It was all a bit frightening. Fearful, always fearful. This was Beatty's new life. It's one thing to be alone, but to be alone with a person between whose legs there is a puffing, hissing stream rising from the earth that might erupt like lava, and her guests flowing in every direction, and what use are you when you can't lift an elderly doll like woman smaller than yourself up off the floor? She began to feel weak. If only there were someone who could give her a hand and lift her up. Then she would eat a banana or something. She would go over there, but only after Master left. When this Rosie Raza looks at her, she feels naked. Clothing flowing in all directions in the hallway, and the people wearing it. Was I wondering about naked all this time? But it didn't matter, since I was alone. Who would see then? But now everyone's watching. Betty trembled. She continued to feel anxious. No one else is anxious. The cloth is being laid out so patiently and traced with chalk. And then he went out onto the balcony and puffed on a cigarette. Rosie doesn't smoke. She doesn't chew pan. After all, she is not a man. Chapter 62. Let us pay close attention to the shady dealings to get a sense of what happened. But the what doesn't jive with the why. What why? What a wacky pair. Misleading, deluding, arbitrary. Be a believer, have faith, or you will rock the boat. Don't be a prisoner of 2 plus 2 is 4. Don't be Gandhi's 3 monkeys, which were actually Mizaru, Kikazaru, and Iwazaru, inhabitants of the Toshogu temple in Nikko, Japan, that saw no evil, heard no evil, spoke no evil. If only we had chosen to speak what we see and hear. That's why we didn't realize that maths is full of twists and turns, and 2 plus 2 is simply creative counting. A pair can be anything flowing in every direction, like Rosie. And finally, is there a Shakespearean method in madness or no? Shakespeare did ask, but he got no answer. And he won't get any, in fact, nor in fancy. Stories and tales are dreams that create meaning as they move along. Borges reminds us of this. All is Maya. He says that too, which, just like everything else, originated in India. This too had already been said before. A dream is like a tree, where each branch, twig, leaf, shoot sings its own story, lifting its vast arms, and tiny little ones too, holding hands and emerging separately as well. A story joins, and what it scatters rises from the air, earth, sand, and weaves a new warp, a new woof. If it hasn't yet woven one, it will. Cells also join. An entity emerges of a human, of a collective, of a part, of parts of part. And if half human, half tree join together, that too becomes a full-fledged entity, like Barry and the crow, Amma and the cane, Rosie and the river, Beatty and Prone. Then it is not false or a myth that wolf man, fish girl, bug brain, butterfly heart, tortoise head, color fall, carp grabbing, potter homeland are all matched, mismatched personalities, whether complete or incomplete, and all infinite if evanescent. Chapter 63. The guard isn't worried either. He buzzes the intercom and tells them that Raza Tailor Master is coming up. Is there any irony in this tone? Does he too wonder if this is Rosie coming in Raza attire? Or does he actually think that the one comes to look after Mataji, the other to stitch and hem mass clothing and also take orders from other residents of the society? One of them brings Ma downstairs for short strolls and takes her to sit by the tomb where the peacocks cry, and returns bearing peacock feathers in her hands, which Mataji dangles from her golden cane as if to announce that the days of butterfly peacocks are here. The other, after showing the fabric and discussing the stitching and listening to Ma's wishes, goes out onto the balcony and lights a cigarette, and if KK comes right around then, he goes out and puffs with him. KK comes infrequently, but come he does, before going to the office or after, as though challenging Betty to get up the nerve to demand her key back. What Betty objects to most of all is why she deserves no prior notice or anything. Even the voices she hears deceive her. She thinks it's Rosie's but finds Raza, or she's sure it's Raza but it's Rosie. Is there one voice? Or do we all have one voice, which comes out feminine for a feminine body and masculine for a masculine body? Some femininity, some masculinity. Here too, a mixture. Here too, the river that flows in both directions. KK also flows in every direction. Ma, Rosie, and he all sit together. Ma, Raza, and he as well. Rosie, the medicine woman. Raza, the booze man. He brings it even on dry days, and KK pours him a peg with a thank you. Ma, she who was wont to nurse a lemon honey brandy, also partook, even without Sid. When they call out to Betty, she's always busy. She's got in the habit of steering clear of everyone. Unaware of her wishes, the party goes till late. Do stay, Amma says to KK, one evening after the hospital days, without wondering where he'll sleep. Now that she sleeps alone in the large room and Betty sleeps in the guest room. Or did she mean like before? Chapter 64. Being sick of oneself is worse than being sick of anything else. The absolute worst. Others are at least other. You can get away from them, for good or for a couple of hours. If a wife is sick of her husband, she can offload to her girlfriends. She leaves home and begins to breathe again. Outside the gate, she starts off at a trot. When she gets to the street, she breaks into a run. Now fly, soar, fall. As is your fate. If getting out isn't in the cards, you can still fling the tiresome party from your mind. If that doesn't work either, then them down in your mind. Smash them to the ground, enthrone yourself on a peak. If you put them below, you'll automatically end up above. Feel pride that will blot out the oppressor like a cloud. Delude yourself into a state of smugness. And the best solution of all, turn every intolerable thing into a huge joke and laugh it from your mouth. Ha 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 ho 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 ho. Laughter is a thing that humans have learned and taught. There must have been some time in the past when humans didn't know how to laugh. Nor did they feel joy at the birth of a child, nor sobs of sorrow at the passing of a loved one. Then the two had to be strained apart so they got joy from joy as well as a method of removing sorrow. Then humans became happy even after they weep. And when they laugh, they are just plain happy. The animals too learned these tricks by their side. Not just the dog's tail, but his mouth too began to laugh. Although the ones on the street will still make frowny faces. The cat refuses to belong to the house, else it too would be having a chuckle. Alice's cat strove to smile. It's all about self-confidence, which springs from laughter. It's another matter that just as all things have an ill use, so too has the smile. And today, the smile roams the street as evildoers, villains, scoundrels toss their horrid smiles about, causing harm, and laughter remains, but compassion is gone. But Betty's smile has already turned upside down, and all mirth has gone missing. Only fed upness remains, which is what she felt in regard to herself. Because in adding a garlic chili seasoning to the dal, the question rose to the lips of her mind: is this me? Then who am I? So when did I become me? And when did I come to live in this house? Who is this? Or who was that? This she who is unmatched in running the house in an efficient manner and catering to the needs and desires of her offspring? No, mother in feeling, repelled at KK's kisses and getting annoyed at herself. From backstage, where she listened to the conversations of Rosie, Raza, Amma, or watched relatives opening all the drawers and cabinets, taking out napkins, glasses, paper, pans, evaluating and prizing the things that lay within, without objection she watches, and Amma's instructions spring from her own mouth now to the maids, neighbors, guards, gardeners. She fries pakoras for Sid and his troops, rolls out papad. So then, what is she? When did I become me? Am I me or a mouse, diving behind furniture, scurrying about the house? How can you be happy with yourself if you imagine yourself a mouse? You can't even run from yourself. According to Borges, the world unfortunately is real. I unfortunately am Borges. Or, as Confucius said, wherever you go, there you are. That is, wherever you go, there you'll find a mouse. Betty sits among her books pretending to work, and when she lifts her pen, the bangles on her wrist jingle, the ones Amma had given her. And at this, the question jingles afresh. When did I become me? And am I me? Or have I become Ma? Chapter 65. Bells and whistles. These are things that pierce not just the air but the heart and bump into the body. Those that live in houses understand this, because their hand shakes suddenly while writing something and their body lurches suddenly while doing something. Some flee their homes. Many, mostly men, stuff cotton in their ears and crawl inside themselves. Those who can't do any of these things learn the trick of swerving about so as to avoid the bells and whistles. These latter are women, of course. When Raji Seth translated Rilke into Hindi, she pressed the bells and whistles between the lines and created a new kind of punctuation. Sheila Rohekar counted the pressure cooker whistles as she wrote, making her lines gleam with a fresh calculus. Maitri Pushpa forged her own path, which she populated with a band of women calling themselves villagers, who pushed aside all those who stood in their way. As a result, when bells and whistles trilled, they collided with the village women and collapsed. A fresh new dhwani, a vibration of wobbling bells and whistles rang out, and Maitri's writings were as killer as her pakoras. This is what we call bell and whistle writing. It's a style of writing that contains fresh artistic resonance. It's the secret recipe for success for those who must work in the midst of everything. It's something that can't be learned in a day, and those who don't learn it won't. But for those who do, they whistle a different tune to their whistle bells and slake everyone's thirst in so doing. To give a final example, Sid's wife, who won't enter the story because she is not a character in it, at some point in the future, did an amazing job with bell whistles punctuation whilst climbing the corporate ladder in the company where she worked, and raising her darling daughter to boot. With Sid's cooperation, it would be miserly, but not to add. Or think of it this way. Once you have fulfilled your social duty, such as getting married, giving birth to children, caring for your in laws, Go ahead and start wearing Reeboks and witness how their decisive gaze falls like a hammer on the shrill, squeaky shrieking of whistle bells. Some are able to learn nothing. They jump at everything. So words remain incomplete, sentences limp, and they themselves are crippled. When the pressure cooker, door, phone, kettle, washing machine, oven whistle a long tweet, tweet, they make the whole house dance. The reverberation is so powerful that if you haven't grown used to it, you'll rattle as though you have collided with a heavy object, the way Betty does. Others get up and turn off the whistle, but here it's the whistles that are turning off Betty. The punctuation of her work is not coming together. Work has become attempted work, in the midst of peering out at the comings and goings from behind her books, at the daily arrival of Rosie, which is not true, but truth is in the seeming, not in the being. Rosie had been mentioning she had to go somewhere. She kept going away, sometimes to Jangai, sometimes to Vyara. She had phoned Ma from Buxar, from Mewat, Karnal, Bhonsey, Bombay too. She was setting up a function, arranging a charity sale, making money. Betty's ears perk up from behind the books as she listens to all this talk of going abroad, about Pakistan, about her passport. We'll get Buddy to take care of it. Amma's voice. Will he agree? What will he think of getting such a passport made? For female Rosie or what? Betty smiles snidely to herself. She removes the book from the bookshelf, peers through the gap, and sees it's not Rosie, it's Raza. As if in retaliation for Betty's sarcasm, she had morphed into Raza Tailor Master. The deception of those two was wearing Betty out. Is it Raza Tailor Master who wants a passport? In his passport it will say male without doubt. She can see one of Rosie's, no, Raza's, eyes between the books. Betty imagines he or she has closed the other eye, as though winking, and she makes a sketch in her mind. He must be so crooked behind his fine manners. He looks at Amma with a deceitful eye. Was this Rosie's cunning or Master's? And this new mischief about getting a passport made? K.K. Bhai will get a passport made, she heard Raza saying. By now, K.K. was his bestie. K.K.'s lustful eyes blinked in Betty's soul, although now he didn't so much as glance at her. Otherwise, the two of us would be chatting away about why Rosie had become Raza. They are one person, aren't they? Or two. One is flat-chested, the other is flat between the thighs. Or they are two in one, Jekyll and Hyde. But which is Jekyll and which is Hyde? Who is who? One day she asked Ma, not like that, like this, about how the smell of cigarette smoke had started getting into the house. Ma was silent. Why does Master Ji smoke? Ma was silent. He also has crooked teeth like Rosie. If a person keeps quiet every turn, it gets awkward. What is their religion? Whose? Ma then asked. Rosie Bua's and Raza Master Ji's. Ma began to laugh. You're actually interested in someone's religion? And Betty shut up, as though Ma had cautioned her not to dig too deep. Leave them be. One religion or two? One person or two? Forget about it. Chapter 66. That's how forgetting works. You can forget whatever you wish to, even that you had wished to forget. A border is drawn all around that memory, and no method remains to reach it any longer, provided that you don't stagger across, on purpose or not. And even if you do stagger, that initial memory doesn't remain. It's a reinvented memory. A bit like when they say that before becoming a fetus, you were someone else who was born again. But now, in this life, your personality has been made anew by the day-to-day. The one who was reborn, that's not you. You are someone else, bound to that other by memory. If the memory comes, so the mouth falls open, gaping, and eyes pop at both the forgotten and the new. Because there's a new world over the border, whether you go backwards or forward. As when the two women in the story arrived in Khyber, it was the same Khyber that had been there before, but also completely new, and the dangers were new, even though they said it had also been dangerous before. Lines get crossed like conversations if they are not a presentation in a seminar. Time and order get jumbled. Breaths and sights and smells and taste and wheels and Catherine wheels and prose and poetry too. This is why the wind roars, because it knocks into everything, then gets wounded and falls back, and there too it collides with wind. Wind is memory. It is a question. One should definitely remember and also question. Where? How? That which was? Like that. So then, there is questioning and memory in walls, in words, in sights. They are cracked. They have fallen. They get up again. What's it to me? Who am I? Which way to my village? What are you staring at so hard? These aren't the questions whose answers you memorize, pull together and write down in your exam booklet, get your results. Real questions don't have answers. Where is our India? This is spouted on, but even those who go on and on with this hardly know the answer themselves. The thing is that the question isn't about the big and great, vast, great, outspread, large. The question has to do with smallness. It's in the territory of little and slight and details. In fact, it really isn't a question at all. One must look, take note, pay attention, study, notice detail. One tree standing apart in the jungle, a face flickering in a large group, the memory of malaise that arises for a moment on a sympathetic face, a tiny wrinkle peeking in the elevator from amongst the makeup and paint. The rest that's talked about is for covering up what has been said, obscuring detail. That which is far is hidden far away. Look up close if you must. That's the only thing that will take the sight far. The ant slips through the wall. It sneaks into the crack and crosses over to the other side by digging a hole with its breath. Beyond the border, passes the Khyber Pass into another world, past the pass, close to the close. If the family had looked close, they would have noticed the intentions of others. If they hadn't been so wrapped up in themselves, they would have noted many details. Questions would have arisen, or they would have raised them. Of course, they noticed nothing, entrenched as they were in their own preconceptions, sure that Ma should come back here, or that she should stay over here. How could they have foretold that one day she herself would say, I must go?